I'm calling the August 15th, 2023 meeting of the Camarillo City Planning Commission to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Limon,
Present.
Commissioner Davidson,
Here.
Vice Chair Etzel,
Here.
Chair Vandermeulen.
Present.
Everyone's present.
Thank you. And I will turn to Commissioner Limon for Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is consent items with the one item of the minutes from our last meeting of June 6th. Did anybody catch any changes, corrections?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Okay, that passes. Thank you. So this is a time, do we have any cards for any additional comments not related to tonight's agenda? Okay, thank you. Then we are on to our discussion item and CPD 254. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, we have a staff report will be presented by Associate Planner Mike Seepak.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair, Vice Chair. Welcome to my presentation.
Thank you, Michael.
The request is to allow a brand new fast food restaurant in the CPD Commercial Plan Development Zone located in the Promenade Outlet Center. The project site is currently a vacant lot with a small surface parking element located along its northeast and southeast edges. Through a combination of modifications and land divisions, a total of 5 separate restaurant building pads were created all along Ventura Boulevard. To date, 3 of these have been developed. These include the location of Chipotle, the site of Cracker Barrel, and the site of Finney's Craft House. A similar project for Chick-fil-A on the same site was proposed to the Planning Commission on September 6, 2011, and largely to the inclusion of a drive-through, the Planning Commission found it inconsistent with the specific plan, incompatible with the character of the surrounding buildings, and determined that the shopping center's layout was not intended to accommodate such a provision. The Planning Commission voted to deny the project. The decision was appealed to the City Council by the applicant. The appeal was continued at the October 26, 2011 City Council meeting and withdrawn shortly after by the appellant. The existing site, shown here from Ventura Boulevard looking southeast, the location sits on a prominent corner of the boulevard and one of the many gateways into the Promenade outlets. The proposed site layout shows a 5,150 square foot building that will be accessed by a drive aisle of Ventura Boulevard. A new trash enclosure, an outdoor patio located along the southeast portion of the building, and complementary landscaping are proposed as part of the design. The layout includes a 1,406 square foot dining room, a mobile order pickup and curbside delivery counter, as well as associated kitchen, back office, and storage facilities. The proposed architecture has been reviewed and found consistent with the Heritage Zone design guidelines. The northwest elevation promises to be the most prominent one, as viewed here from Ventura Boulevard. The design is Spanish-inspired, with a focal tower and transverse gable elements giving the design articulation. Further projection will be achieved with trellis elements located above the windows and awnings located above doorways. The design will be enhanced by the addition of an accent color, stone wainscot, exposed rafter tails, and clay barrel tile. The Spanish design will also be accentuated by the addition of a cast concrete archway, smooth trowel stucco finish, and a Spanish cornice element. Parking on site will be provided by a mix of existing and proposed stalls. Required parking on site has been analyzed as part of CPD 197 Mod 1, which accounted for the site's future restaurant use. This notwithstanding, the applicant and the outlets will be required to enter into a parking and access agreement. In accordance with the Camarillo Municipal Code, the number and size of loading bays for restaurant uses should be determined in conjunction with a plan development permit. Due to the constraints related to the site size and location and the business utilizing an after-hours key drop-off delivery system, the restaurant would be allowed to conduct loading activities in the immediately adjacent drive aisles, provided this is done outside of the business operation hours of both the Promenade and the restaurant. The applicant has requested that the loading condition be revised to be limited within Chick-fil-A's reasonable efforts outside of the regular business hours. Staff do not support this request to amend the condition. The project site was previously reviewed under CEQA. The subsequent environmental impact report, which included the development site, assumed the building pad being developed into a future restaurant and analyzed any impacts resulting from any such use accordingly. The design and intensity of the development are consistent with the analysis provided in the SEIR, and the project will not cause any additional significant effect on the environment, which was not previously examined. Staff recommend finding that the project is consistent with the subsequent environmental impact report prepared for the Camarillo Promenade Shopping Center and adopting a resolution approving CPD 254 subject to the recommended conditions of approval. The actions of the Planning Commission is final unless an appeal is filed within 10 days of the date of their action. This concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff?
I have no questions.
No questions, no?
You have no questions? Would you repeat the size of the dining area for me, please?
Yes, it is 1,406 square feet.
Okay. Thank you. And I read in the packet that it's the parcel and then they're extending part of it, adding to it.
That is correct.
Where is that additional part to the parcel?
One of the plans attached to our packet should show that lot line.
Yeah, I tried looking, on my computer, it was all fuzzy, so I think I could see the,
The site plan should have a note that points towards the, let's see if we can have it here. Right, okay, so.
it's like it was showing me the whole site, but I didn't see where the additional area was to the original.
That's correct. So there's a line right here, hangs
Right.
around there, goes around the trash enclosures, and all the way around there.
Right,
The reason behind that was that the restaurant, there's a low coverage requirement in the CPD zone of 30%, and the location of the trash enclosure and a portion of the building on the original lot were slightly outside of the confines of that lot. So the
Okay.
project is conditioned to carry out a lot line adjustment to accommodate for these.
okay. Because it looked like when I was reading it, what I was looking at on that line was the final size of the final lot line.
That is correct.
Okay. Yes, I was just trying to see where it was added.
Yes,
And this-
and then there's an additional line which delineates the lease line, which is unrelated to the law, but I can understand that it could add to the confusion.
Okay. And this is leased land from the owner of the shopping center?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. Those are the only questions I had. Thank you.
No problem.
I think I have a question. On the loading step, I know there was, or the loading docks that staff went through. Is the city satisfied with the resolution of that? Where it's after-hour delivers and all that?
The staff analyzed the loading justification letter provided by the applicant, and we are satisfied with the condition stating that loading should take place outside of business hours, and that it can take place in the drive aisles.
Thank you.
Okay. No questions, Commissioner Limon? Okay. And, I think this might be more for the applicant as far as the number of seats and such inside.
I believe there's 92 seats inside, and there's a further 24 in the patio, if I recall correctly.
Do you have any idea how this compares to the size of the one in Oxnard?
I must admit, I do not.
Okay. So I didn't think you would, but thought I'd ask.
A lot of chicken sandwiches.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have one question for staff.
Okay. Commissioner Lamone?
Can you point out, I just want to make sure that the conditions of approval include the contingency upon execution of an agreement for the parking? I think you said in your report that.
Yes. Let me see if I can find this condition of approval. Condition 106, the developer and the outlets must enter into a shared parking agreement,
Okay.
parking and access agreement.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions for staff, maybe we could have the applicant come forward.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to hear our project tonight. We're very excited about this Chick-fil-A and grateful to staff for their work in getting us here. We've worked with the staff for the past few months to refine the project and to provide an architectural design that is well thought out and would be a great addition to the Camarillo outlets. Regarding the conditions of approval, Chick-fil-A does agree to the conditions of approval with the exception of COA number 158, and we would like to discuss that tonight and to provide a few examples of what we're looking for in the verbiage that we're asking. The reason that we are asking for just this revision to the verbiage is if there's any unforeseen circumstances, if we're unable to make a delivery that morning, maybe an accident happened on the freeway, we just need the ability to not have to shut down the restaurant if there were any unforeseen circumstance like that. So, thank you.
Okay.
We'd like to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Well, I'll go back to my question comparing, because the 5,500 or 5,000 some square feet is quite large, but I can't picture how that compares to like Oxnard or the Ventura stores.
Sure. So we do, Chick-fil-A's are pretty prototypical, and without a drive-through, the restaurant is a little bit larger than the typical drive-through restaurant. I don't have that exact number in my head, but I can tell you that the 5,150 square feet would not be typical with a drive-through restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah, and 92 seats is on the higher end for the seating counts that I've seen. It's not the ultimate highest. There's a range, but 92 seats is a generous amount, as well as including the 24 seats that are outside.
Okay.
I will say that Chick-fil-A likes to have fairly large kitchens, and that is to make really efficient production of the food. So you might see that there's a little bit more space allocated to the kitchen than perhaps a different restaurant, and that's just because they really like to optimize the layout of the kitchen.
Okay, thank you. At least that gives me a little bit more visual look at, what I'm looking at, because I've been in both the Ventura one and the Oxnard one, so. You have a
Question.
question?
How many deliveries typically would a Chick-fil-A receive in a given week? I mean, are we talking a daily delivery, or is this a once a week?
Sure. So for our or for our busiest stores, it would be daily. I think that the typical Chick-fil-A would get about 3 to 4 deliveries a week, so it's not on a daily basis. A store like this, where we would not have the ability to deliver during the day, would most likely be an everyday occurrence for these. That's why we believe that this emergency deliveries really would not happen, because we'd have a scheduled delivery every morning, where the delivery would happen. We're on a key drop system, so your truck drivers would make your deliveries just before your teammates show up, and there's no real interaction between the two, and therefore circulation is really not an issue for the drivers in the morning. And we also we've looked at the site, at an overall site, and have a plan on how deliveries would occur in that rare event. So we understand within Chick-fil-A's reasonable efforts does kind of leave a lot of leeway that would maybe not be allowable. And so maybe there's an option to do a plan on file with the city, and then an emergency delivery would occur based on that plan on file with the city.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, which condition were you talking about?
It would be condition number 158.
And did you have some specific language you were going to propose to?
Yes, we do have, do you mean specific verbiage that we would like, or a specific plan as far as those?
Yeah, specific verbiage that,
Okay.
wait, let's see, which, 158?
158.
Okay. And have they shared that with the city yet?
So we have shared that with the city. Planners don't agree to our ask for Chick-fil-A's reasonable efforts. We do have 2 alternates here that we could ask for. We just want to ask for something that the city's comfortable with. We don't plan on making these unscheduled deliveries. We just don't want to exclude ourselves from that option and have to shut down the restaurant on a day that just got a little too busy. So, yeah, our alternate here would be, barring unforeseen circumstances, bulk store delivery times must be limited to hours outside of regular operating business hours of the restaurant and the Promenade. That's an alternate that's very similar. And an alternate that we have here would be, best, yes, I do. So that bulk store delivery times must be limited within Chick-fil-A's reasonable efforts to hours outside of regular operating business hours of the restaurant and the Promenade outlets.
Yeah, and I think just to talk a little bit about that verbiage, that really does emphasize the fact that Chick-fil-A will extend their efforts, of course, to do the key drop deliveries. That is actually their preference in almost every project that we've worked with, even in different cities. Chick-fil-A likes to do the deliveries outside of their normal business hours because it does just make it so much more efficient for everyone involved. Like Dylan said, the request to add the verbiage of within Chick-fil-A's reasonable efforts, that is really just Chick-fil-A's intent in wanting to be able to honor the conditions of approval throughout the life cycle of the restaurant. We want to have a condition of approval that Chick-fil-A knows that they can adhere to 100% of the time. But like you guys have seen, sometimes if there's a freeway closure or if there is a delivery person maybe who called out sick and a different delivery person needs to sub in for them and maybe the truck is later getting to the store, Chick-fil-A just wants to make sure that they would still be able to comply with the intent of the condition of approval without having there be a day when the delivery doesn't make it until they open and all of a sudden the Chick-fil-A has to be closed for the whole day. These are local owners and operators who have the Chick-fil-A, so it's very much a personal business. And so the personal operator would be extremely impacted if there was ever a situation where the store had to be closed for a day. That's a person whose income and their employees would be impacted. So that's why we're just trying to come up with that language within Chick-fil-A's reasonable efforts to really drive home the fact that Chick-fil-A's planning on doing the deliveries outside of business hours, but if they extend all their efforts and for some reason there's a freeway closure or a driver calls out sick, we just want to make sure we're honoring the COA.
Okay. Do you have other questions on that?
No, when's it appropriate to talk about that, after we close the public hearing? Okay.
Okay.
I have a follow-up to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
under the discussion. So after we hear public comments, and then you guys are discussing, that would be the.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Limon?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this language from other permits that you have with other jurisdictions, or?
A lot of other jurisdictions don't require a condition of approval like this in general, even when we don't have a loading zone. So this would be just kind of standard language that we think is the most helpful for the condition, but I will say for most of the projects that Chick-fil-A works with, even if they don't have a loading zone, generally we are not actually asked to have a condition like this, which is why it is causing some concern, just because for most projects, Chick-fil-A doesn't have to agree to a condition like this.
Yeah, I understand the concern of, with the strict language and not having any exceptions, that the owner may be in a position where they just have to shut down, and there are other consequences. And we'll speak with the staff shortly thereafter. But, I'll say that I'm concerned about the language of the reasonable efforts is just so broad and left to interpretation, which in this case would be solely in the discretion of the owner. And of course, we would need some predictability, of what those exceptions are to avoid congestion and other hazards. So, an unforeseen circumstances also is, pretty broad and left open to interpretation. And so this is a language that you're proposing particularly for this permit, and you haven't seen this situation in other jurisdictions. And as you know, given that I imagine a lot of your drivers will be coming from Los Angeles, it's very frequent that there are unforeseen circumstances, on the freeways. And so having some guidelines that provide some more predictability and common understanding would be more useful.
Absolutely, and we totally understand that. And another option that we have here is to keep the COA and just add a caveat that emergency deliveries are allowed only according to a plan on file with city planning. That gives the city, as well as the applicant, the option to revise that if it's determined that this is a plan that's not working. Then the whole project doesn't need to be revisited. That's just that loading plan can be the item of concern.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so we could even show like an operations option. In other words, if there was to be a situation where loading had to occur on an emergency, we could make sure we work with staff beforehand to make sure it occurs in a location that they're okay with.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Davidson?
2 quick questions. One, are these full-size semis or those kind of smaller ones, or what are we talking about in terms of size?
So it does depend on what the restaurant needs at the time and what is available. Our delivery partners do use trucks anywhere from a 16-foot trailer up to a 40-foot trailer.
Okay.
And it just depends, like we said.
That makes sense.
If you wanted 3 deliveries in the week, you'd go with the larger trailer, and on a daily basis, you could go down to a smaller truck.
Okay, and how long, on average, does it take to pull up and then complete the delivery and drive away? I'm not going to hold you to it, just a
Sure,
question.
it's about 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And what time schedule are we looking at in the morning before opening?
So I believe the restaurant hours are 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. So
wow.
sometime in the 5 o'clock hour, they would attempt to be there, have everything dropped off, and then be gone before the employees show up for their 6 o'clock shift.
It's really okay. Thank you very much. Definitely well before any of the other stores or businesses are open. Okay. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, then I think that's all our questions for you for right now.
Thank you very
you. Do we have any comment cards? Okay. Thank you very much. Then we can, I believe, go to discussions.
You want the architectural report too, or
Let's do
just the discussion?
let's do our discussion. Well,
Yeah, whatever you want.
let's give us the architectural
Chairperson,
first.
I am here at your, I serve at
Well,
your
thank you
pleasure.
very much. Let's, yes, have it architectural first, and that can be included in all of our discussions.
Very good. So the Architectural Committee met prior to this meeting for CPD 254. We looked at the architectural renderings and the plans that were submitted. We found that everything was consistent with the area in terms of character and architectural sort of enhancements to the building, and so we voted and would recommend approval of the architectural portion to the full committee, or commission. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then we'll go on to any other discussions having to do with this project.
Yeah, I think there are concerns about 158. I can understand that, but is there a way to quantify something where it's not vague? Because I think that might happen in that, I mean, the city has it as a condition, but, I mean, the remedy wouldn't be you drive over there and shut down the restaurant for the day, I wouldn't think. Maybe there'd be some sort of a,
Yeah, so I really think that, the staff has had this discussion with the applicant for quite some time. Mike has definitely worked with them on this. We actually did not see any proposed additional language. I know there were discussions, but no actual proposals for different language. So I think that if they want to be able to deliver kind of whenever, then they really need to provide that loading zone, or we may need to continue the item in order to revisit this and continue it to a later date.
And Chairperson, members of the Planning Commission, if I may, an alternative, the commission is not required to craft language here. It can certainly direct staff and city attorney's office to work with the applicant on something based on the commission's direction this evening. So that's an alternative as well.
So we could direct this back to the applicant and staff to reconsider some wording on it, or?
That would be one option. It could also alternatively make a motion to approve, subject to possible revisions and ironing out that there should be an exception, but kind of ironing out those issues based on the discussion this evening. It's up to the Planning Commission.
Oh. So basically, if I'm hearing this right, we could approve it from what we have, but condition on additional discussions on this one area?
It could be approved subject to staff and the applicant reaching an agreement as to the revised wording based on the Planning Commission's direction. That would be one option. It could certainly continue the public hearing to see if the applicant can come back with additional or revised language. These are just options for the commission.
Okay.
it sounds to me that maybe would the staff's preference be to work out the deal so we have a finalized thing rather than condition it with something vague? Does it create an obstacle for you guys?
So honestly, I mean, as Paul was mentioning here, Mr. McLaren, we've been working with the applicant on this for a while, and the requirement is to have a loading zone. And so our attempt to work with them and the compromise is to have the loading zone, on site in the drive aisle. I mean, it could be up to a 52-foot truck coming in here, and they could have the loading zone in the drive aisle on off hours, when they're not conducting business, which if they have the ability to come in and park a semi right in the middle of the drive aisle, we're going to start hearing a lot of complaints from the customers. I'm sure they're not going to want to do that anyways, and even if it's just a half hour, when people are there for lunch or breakfast and trying to get to work, they need to be in and out and on their way. If they really want to have that flexibility to deliver anytime they want or under emergency situations, they really need a loading zone. All the other restaurants out there have loading zones. One's a 52-foot for Cracker Barrel. The other restaurants out there have loading zones because they want to be able to load whenever they want. So we think that having the condition is our compromise and our solution to work with them. And if it's really an off, shot where the freeway is closed, these are very rare situations that we can deal with them. We're not going to go there and shut them down. We're going to hear about it. They're going to probably lose business because the customers are going to be mad. So I think this is something that, we could work out at the staff level with the existing condition, the way we wrote it, that deliveries must be, conducted, when the restaurant's not open. Now, things happen, we understand that, but it's on the off shot. It's not on, a weekly basis where they're always late. If they're starting to be late, we're going to hear about them. The way the condition is written right now will give us the authority to go and address the issue, and then they can work on, scheduling those deliveries maybe a half hour earlier with their delivery, network. So we'd like to leave the condition the way it is and the loading the way it is now.
One thought that I have is that by coming that early, they are, as far as, it would have to be something pretty major on a freeway, because they're not going to hit the freeway traffic, usually by coming that early. Was one of the thoughts I had. Did you have any other considerations on this?
Yeah, I appreciate that this is an exception, and I'm concerned about precedent moving forward, so that's a very important point. And also appreciate that, at 6 a.m., the business hours are very different from the surrounding businesses. Can you describe a little bit more of like the drive aisle? I can't exactly picture where there would be maybe like a conflict between early customers and late delivery.
Yes, certainly. A site plan over here illustrates the two drive aisles that are adjacent to the parking areas immediately next to the restaurant. Let's see if I can have one of these guys here. So there's a drive aisle right here, and there's another one right here, and there's another one right here. The applicant would likely utilize the two nearest on a regular basis to conduct deliveries. The entryway from Ventura Boulevard is right here, and then you can proceed further down towards the outlets, or you can proceed that way. There is some infrastructure here. You can't see it on this site plan. It is electric chargers for electric vehicles by Electrify America. Those would be subject to access 24 hours. Of course, it might not be a major issue early in the morning, but it could potentially lead to access issues thereafter, after the restaurant and the promenade does open. Of course, we still have to consider health and safety matters. In case of an emergency at the restaurant, the fire department would need to access the restaurant to be able to act upon a fire, and that might be something that they may have to do from the nearest adjacent drive aisle.
Thank you. And when you say that the condition as written gives you the authority and that you'll make reasonable efforts to be responsive when there is a late delivery, how would that work because the office won't be open, right? So how would you address this issue? It wouldn't be for that specific delivery, but like after the fact, then you would work with them?
Yeah, it would be a reactive situation where, we would hear from the public or a customer. And we're not going to be out there, monitoring it.
No.
If it's an issue, the way the condition's written gives us the authority to correct it.
I understand. Okay.
It seems like as a practical matter, it'd be less of an issue because there's not a drive-through, right? People are parking to go into the restaurant, so.
That is correct, yes.
Was there consideration, and if so, can you explain what your reasoning was of maybe providing like a small grace period, after 6 a.m., given again like the low traffic at that time and likely not high volume of customers?
So staff discussed with the applicant how a delivery might look during the business hours, and what our suggestion was for the applicant to produce a comprehensive document that details a plan for such an eventuality. We did not receive anything to that note, but that was a way for us to try and move past this issue.
Yeah. Thank you.
I kind of agree with you that the suggested language was too vague, that it's like not having a condition at all.
Do you have any other?
It seems that it's in everyone's best interest that this happens before hours. Certainly, the restaurant owner doesn't want a big semi blocking traffic that's going to spend money in their restaurant. The city has an overarching desire to maintain an orderly and efficient delivery system, and something that if it is outside of what other business owners have been held to, that there are reasonable restrictions, because that could really alienate not only the past builders and operators, but future. So I agree that a precedent would be very dangerous here. But what I also heard was that the staff is understanding of, hey, things happen, and spirit of the law versus letter of the law. So I liked what the city attorney said, that we can pass this as is, and if staff decides that there's something worthy of bringing back because there's better language, great. If not, I think the language is fine the way it is. It provides the enforcement if necessary. Like we said, you're not going to be out there hiding in the bushes waiting for that semi to come at 6:04. So I think that everybody can feel pretty comfortable that there's some reasonableness in between the spirit and the letter of the law here that will allow your operator and owner-operator to get what they need done, but also to respect a city just trying to sort of extend a helping hand and not have a loading zone, but also say, okay, but in return, we have certain expectations. And I don't, my position is there's nothing unreasonable about either side, and with that, thank you.
Yeah, I'll say I agree and will defer to the staff. It seems like this has been pending for some time now, and there have been lots of discussions and consideration that has gone into the matter, and appreciate the applicant bringing these two alternatives to us. But it seems like it's something more concrete, as what was requested by the city, should have been brought and filed earlier.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I kind of agree with Rob that I would be okay voting for it as written today so that the applicants can start moving forward. And then if the city's going to have further discussion about some document, they could still do that outside of our approval, I think, huh?
Yeah. And like I say, to me, the nice thing is that they do open so early that the deliveries, 99.9% of the time, probably are going to be there prior to opening and very early before freeways jam up for people going to work. So I think it's such a small percentage of times that it might happen. And, and the staff sounds to me like they're willing to work on this on a case basis if it comes up, to solve it. I certainly don't want to do anything not to have this facility open. But listening to both sides, it sounds like it can go forward as it is and be worked out. If there is a problem that comes up when we see what it is actually, or if they want to consider some other wording later. But does that make sense?
Yes, except I think my comment was a little more strictly meant
Right.
to be stricter, that there is no additional discussion after this, that we are going to pass
Okay.
it as is. And if the applicant and city staff do have additional comments and something does need to come
Right.
back to us, it would be incumbent on city staff to bring
Bring it
it.
to
But
us.
we are not,
Okay.
we would, I'm certainly just talking for myself, I would be more in support of just strict language as it is now. If they want to continue talking, great, but otherwise, we're done. It moves forward, and, that way they can start building and getting the blow-up cow and all the things that Chick-fil-A is so good at doing.
And I think that's what I'm hearing on both
Yeah.
sides. Okay.
So I think it's appropriate to make a motion to call for the resolution at this point.
I'd second that.
This is a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo approving a request by Chick-fil-A Incorporated for a commercial plan development permit to construct a new 5,150 square foot fast food restaurant located at 670 Ventura Boulevard within the commercial plan development zone.
I'll make a motion to waive further reading and vote for adoption.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
I got it.
Chairperson?
Thank you.
If I may, before the vote, I just want to clarify for the record that it is with the condition as it's been proposed, as it's written.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we vote?
Please vote. It's not working.
There we go.
Okay. All right. It's passed as it is, and going forward. Very good. At this point, then, we can go to, thank you very much. Do we have a director's report?
Yes, we do. So we have the Planning Commission tour coming up on September 5th. That will be starting from here at 5 p.m. on that date. And then we will be adjourning that with dinner after the tour. And then we do have items also tracking for September 19th.
We do.
We do.
Okay. All right. Any other additional commissioner comments today?
I have one. Been asked by a couple people, and I think I'm giving the right answer, but saying a lot of the on and off ramps around here seem like they're overgrown with weeds. That's a Caltrans thing, not a city thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Caltrans.
Yeah,
Situation.
does the city talk to them, or they eventually schedule that?
We can have Public Works reach out to them about the overgrowth.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, because I had two different people, unrelated, mention that, and I don't know if it was, all of a sudden the weeds came up, but we have nice entry to the city, and on those off-ramps, they look like they're a little
Yeah,
unattended to.
I think that the rains that we had this year may have gotten things to where they're maybe gotten ahead of Caltrans' ability to keep up because it's growing so quickly because of all the rain. But we do have our Assistant Public Works Director here, James. He can discuss this.
Yeah, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. As Paul said, my name is James Campero, Assistant Public Works Director. But yeah, so a majority of the area on within the ramps and along the freeway are Caltrans jurisdiction. But we have contacts over there. We can you can always direct any questions that come into Public Works staff, and then that way we can pinpoint specific areas.
Okay.
There are a couple areas that are city maintained, such as Springville, and so some of those we do have control over.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any closing comments? No. Closing comments? I want to thank Michael and staff for all the work that you've done on this. It's been a long time coming and one little project, which is a great big project. So thank you very much. It's very good.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
So with that, I will close the meeting.
We missed you guys.